In 1981, Nintendo was not the Nintendo we know today. No Mario Empire, no Zelda, or even Pokemon. Just a company in trouble, at least in the States that is, sitting on a warehouse full of arcade machines that nobody actually asked for. One failed game, Radar Scope, the game that almost sunk Nintendo of America. Now, those cabinets were gathering dust in Seattle, and the company needed a miracle. And that miracle came from a young first time designer named Shigeru Miyamoto. He took that failed hardware, remixed it, and turned it into a strange little game about a stubborn gorilla, a carpenter, and a damsel in distress. And kids still remember the first time they saw Donkey Kong on a cabinet screen. We all thought it didn't look like Space Invaders, it didn't look like Pac Man, it looked like a cartoon you could actually control. Even if you weren't even playing, you still stopped and watched. At the time, this was more than just another arcade game. This was the moment Nintendo's future snapped into place. There's the story of Donkey Kong Arcade from 1981, arcade game that launched Nintendo's future. In the late 1970s, Nintendo wanted a big hit in the American arcade market. They tried a shooter called Radar Scope. Now, Nintendo of America ordered about 3,000 units at the time. The problem? American players, just didn't care. Let's be real, the game flopped. Around 2,000 cabinets sat unsold in a warehouse in Seattle. Nintendo of America's president at the time, Minoru Arakawa, went to his father in law, Nintendo president at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, and basically said, we need something new to put inside these machines, or we're done in the Americas. And Yamauchi looked inside the company for fresh ideas. That's when he turned to a young industrial designer who had never led a game before, Shigeru Miyamoto. Now, Miyamoto started from story first. He loved American cartoons, King Kong, Popeye, and he wanted a simple yet clear story, a big ape, a heroic guy, and a woman who needs help. Now, he couldn't get the full Popeye license at the time, so he created his own cast. So let's take a look at our star players. You got the stubborn gorilla, Donkey Kong, the everyday hero, Jumpman, a carpenter who would later become Mario. But right now, he's just Jumpman. And the girl in danger, Lady, later named to Pauline. And from the start, what set this game apart from others, this game wasn't just about points. It was about a little story on a construction site in New York City. And if we look back retrospectively, it's crazy how this one little design right here, we didn't know it was going to be nothing great. We thought it was like, because back in the day, if you played arcades back in the 80s, there were a lot of characters on screen, like yeah, Pac-Man. Yeah, he's not a human, but still the character had personality and was very recognizable. So to see this, Donkey Kong at the time, just Jumpman stuff, who knew it was going to be? We had no clue it was going to be Mario and stuff like that. But I will say it's just something about iconic about that cabinet. Back in the day, there's just the smell the arcades had, the wooden cabinets in there, and then the Donkey Kong cabinet, which was actually the Radar Scope cabinet originally, it just has a different look. And those cabs are cool because they exclusively say Nintendo. They're the only ones who have that kind of cab. And to be fair, a lot of people had their own signature cabs, like Taito had the small cabs and so forth. But the Nintendo looking cabs, like Popeye, Donkey Kong, and the Donkey Kong sequels, like Donkey Kong Jr., they definitely had a unique look. And the cartoon drawn on the side, I remember seeing that back in the day and thinking, wow, man, what is this game, So Miyamoto had a tough job on his hand. He had to design a game that would do quite a few things. Number one, run on Radar Scope hardware. Two, appeal to American arcade players. And three, be cheap enough to ship it as a conversion kit. Now that's a tall order. So Nintendo worked with a company called Ikegami Tsushinki to help with the programming, while Miyamoto focused on the characters and level design, because that's what he does best. He wanted the game to feel like a moving comic strip, and that's pretty ingenious for back in the day. Arcade comic strip. So how did this come into play? So first off, we got the intro. Donkey Kong climbs up, grabs the girl, and smashes the platform. And then Jumpman climbs up the saber, trying to get through the stages, and between stages, we have the little cutscenes that show the story. Donkey Kong grabs her and goes up. Now, why is that important? What makes this so powerful? And I think at the time, we just took it for granted as kids because it was just a video game. But you're actually, and some games did do that, like Kangaroo had that kind of story as well, with the mom going to get her baby and stuff like that. But this was one of the first times we see it in motion. The iconic scene, whenever you see Donkey Kong climb on top of the girders and stuff like that, and then boom, 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 and then the things come down, and then even taunt you at the end with that little the noise he makes. That says a lot. It's basically setting the groundwork, through one cutscene, and then the little cutscenes in between. After you get to the top of the stage, or you clear the stage, or whatever, he grabs her and climbs up the ladder. That was actually storytelling back in the day with just that small little section right there. And as a grown up now, I can really appreciate the thought and actually give props to actually what was being displayed on the screen, even though it's simple and just part of our gaming arcade, DNA nowadays. Back then, that was a big deal. Now, again, these tiny cutscenes were a big deal at the time. Most arcade games had almost no story. Here's a story played out right on screen. Pauline shouting help, Donkey Kong smirking when you died, and the name Donkey Kong also has its own mystery. Now, the most reliable version of this tale is that Miyamoto wanted a phrase that suggested a stubborn gorilla, Kong, was already slang for gorilla in Japan, and donkey was used to mean stubborn or silly. And I gotta think just how risky this name was at the time. I mean, imagine walking into a boardroom and saying, "Yeah, this game is called Donkey Kong." But that weird title actually helps stick in your head. I mean, it's a reminder that sometimes the strangest ideas are the ones that actually last. So development moved pretty fast on this game. In Redmond, Washington, Nintendo of America staff literally converted those dusty radar scope cabinets by hand, swapping out the boards, changing up the art, and slapping on the new marquees. So let's jump into the gameplay. Now on the surface, Donkey Kong is simple. You move left and right, climb ladders, and jump. That's it. But in 1981, this was brand new. The idea of a character jumping from platform to platform was still fresh at the time. So we can kind of say Donkey Kong is one of the first true platform games and helped define the genre in the future. So you play as Jumpman, and your goal is to reach Pauline at the top of the screen. Along the way, you gotta dodge barrels, jump over barrels, fireballs, and the deadly springs, high stage, and time your jumps across the gaps. And the game can be a little relentless with a lot of stuff coming on screen at one time, which was also cool because it was really, at least I didn't notice back in the day, slowdown. And you do have one small reprieve. You can use the hammer for a short burst of safety and points, and you'll get that every blue moon. They'll have a couple of them per stage, and some of them are actually, in my mind, kind of pointless on a rivet stage. I mean, they do help a little bit, but on the first stage, that's kind of where they shine. And what's also cool about this game, each stage isn't just a loop. It actually has its own layout and challenge. So let's talk about the 4 stages. First up, you got the barrel stage, and this is the classic. Every Donkey Kong, if you think Donkey Kong, I mean, now we know there's other stages, but this is the OG of stages. And any kind of Donkey Kong, port they had in the future would definitely have at least the barrel stage. So you have the classic ramps, you have barrels that roll in different paths, and including the sneaky ones that drop down the ladder. So you have to be really cautious. I still think it's random how they do that. Maybe it's programmed in, but I still feel like it's random when they do it. And the occasional barrel when you get higher up in levels that goes straight across the screen diagonally at the very beginning of the stage, that's kind of when you get higher up. So this one is definitely iconic because, and I like the fact with this one that you can see the level of thought that went into this design of this level. Like some of the ladders are broken, and you can actually half-ass climb up these ladders. Obviously, they're broken; you can't complete it, but it's kind of cool how they do it, and then how the barrels fall off, how they can maybe double and even triple together, and you can like triple jump some of the barrels. I mean, it's just a very cool thing, and a lot going on the first stage. Then you got the cement factory, or also often known by OG gamers as the pie factory, because that's what I thought they looked. That's what everybody thought they looked like back in the day, little pies. And this one's not really straightforward as the barrels. The barrel stage, what's good about the stage 1, the barrels, is the fact that it's straightforward and you know what you gotta do without being told. The conveyor belt stage is a little bit more confusing. You got the conveyor belts going back and forth, you got moving hazards, the fire, the oil, and you got the pies going and the fireballs coming from the oil drum. So this one can be a little convoluted, and a lot of people don't see this stage. If you played like a lot of the console ports, which a lot of people did, might have been their first time playing this game, this one is actually foreign to a lot of people. And then next up, you got the elevator stage, and this one's iconic. Most ports do have this one as well. Well, I don't know. We could say the girder stage is probably the second most popular. But this one, if you have an elevator stage in it, you actually got for the most part, complete version of the port you're playing for this game. And this one was cool, and it's very iconic because of the noise that the little jacks that go across makes, the springs. I call them jacks, but they're springs. That's like a classic sound. When you hear that, you know you're playing Donkey Kong. There's nothing else to make that sound. And it's just cool how even in this stage, you can got little shortcuts you can take, like you can jump across at the very top and not have to deal with going all down at the bottom. So This one's an iconic stage as well with the timing and everything. So yeah, so if you have this stage in the version you're playing of the game, you kind of got an almost complete version. And then lastly, we got another one's super iconic, the rivet stage. I mean, and this one's pretty straightforward. You remove the rivets from the structure under Donkey Kong, and once you remove them all, the whole frame collapses and send them down K rolling to the ground. Yep, I said K rolling just because nobody uses that word anymore. Anyway, this is considered the last stage of the four, and then after that, the levels loop again and just become harder and harder. But I mean, the enemy speed increases and the gaps feel tighter, even though they're not. But the time limit can get more punishing as well because there's more stuff on the screen, and you're trying to navigate more obstacles than you did in the earlier parts of the game. So let's talk about difficulty with this game, because if you ever played Donkey Kong for real, I mean, this is like a novelty game you see in arcades nowadays. But back in the day, if you played this game for real, you knew this was a tough one. I mean, the first stage started off simple enough, but as it went on, unless you're like, King of Kong, like what, a professional player or something like that, this game can be challenging. It's definitely, I feel like it was designed for you to play through and get through every level at least once, okay, if you're a decent player, and then beyond that, if you start looping it like multiple times, unless you got patterns down, this game can be brutally hard, especially the barrel stage. I mean, it can be tough. The other stages you can kind of, they kind of, the stage kind of does it, but on the first one, that's probably one of the hardest because the barrels are unrelenting. They just keep coming. Everything else, so yeah, that's what, and to me, stage one is probably the most fast paced and the easiest one to ramp up difficulty without outright telling you that they're cheating. But yeah, so yeah, definitely a strong design. And what also makes the game special is how, I guess the word is, readable it is. I guess that's the best way I can say it. You can understand most situations of the game and your objectives just by watching. I mean, the barrels signal their path, the fireballs telegraph their movement, and the springs follow patterns you can learn. So yes, this game is punishing, but it's fair. And that balance in the game is a big reason why people are still chasing world records even to this day. So Donkey Kong's story is pretty simple, but in my mind, it was way ahead of its time. I mean, it gives you a clear villain, Donkey Kong, a clear hero, Jumpman, later known as Mario, and a clear goal, Rescue Pauline. So let's talk about the launch, the ports, and the impact. So when Donkey Kong hit arcades in 1981, it was a massive success. I mean, in Japan, it had become the highest grossing arcade game of 1981. In the United States, it was the top earning arcade game of 1982, selling more than 60,000 cabinets by mid 1982 and pulling in around 180 million in revenue in that first big wave alone. Now, we got to remember we said that they only had 3,000 cabinets, for this game with radar scope, and now it's 60,000, not even a couple of years later, of these cabinets being shipped out. That's huge. And for Nintendo of America at least, this was a lifesaver. I mean, all those unwanted radar scope cabinets turned into Donkey Kong machines, and the money from those machines helped Nintendo buy more land, expand, and plan a long-term stay in the US market. Now, one could say they always think about the what if here. What if Donkey Kong had failed? There's a real chance we never get the NES boom we would get a couple of years later. Never get classic Mario as we know him now, and definitely never get the later Nintendo we grew up with. It's crazy how to bank on one arcade hit literally changing the shape of gaming history. But that's exactly what happened here. So let's talk about some of the ports of the game, because this game was pretty much everywhere. I mean, it didn't stay for long in the arcade. I mean, this game just, and some of these ports are very playable, some are unplayable. But I'll give you my opinion on each one I tried. There's quite a few of them. I mean, for the most part, I think we got most of the ones that are prominent. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at those ports, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So the first game we got here is Crazy Kong, and this game, there's actually a very crazy story behind this game, and I feel like it's enough. I was gonna cover it in this video, but there is actually a wild story that I kind of think it deserves its own video, Crazy Kong. But anyway, just know that this was an arcade machine that actually ran on arcade hardware, and it's very similar to the original Donkey Kong, and there are some major differences here. For one, you can see the whole color schematic is different. Donkey Kong looks like he's just out of it. The animations are kind of janky, and the controls are a little janky as well. But this one actually has voice samples when you pick up the hammer and stuff like that, and it kind of runs off that same programming development. If you ever played Crazy Climber back in the day, there's a reason this game gives you Crazy Climber vibes. So yeah, but we'll go more into that story later on. Just know that this is actually a pretty good port of the game. Or I won't say port, version I should say, of the game. It has all the stages, all the levels like it's supposed to. And there's a reason in this girder stage right here where Donkey Kong just looks like an abomination and not like the sensible, nostalgic Donkey Kong that we know from the arcade. But it's actually a fun playthrough. It is pretty challenging as well, but we will revisit this game in the near future. Next up, we got the Amiga, and this one's actually pretty good. The only thing I'll say that the Amiga does graphically, I mean, this thing looks awesome. The only thing I could say, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I'll say is the Donkey Kong up there, the way he looks, he just looks like he's scared to death, or he farted and he's just like hoping nobody will notice, or something. He just looks petrified, like he owes somebody money. Like if he doesn't kill Mario here, something's gonna go wrong. But other than that, the game does move a little slower than the arcade, and the hitboxes on this thing. You try to jump over barrels and objects, you have to be precise when you jump. And like I get this hammer right here, and it's kind of a waste for me because the barrels are so slow. By the time the barrels get to me, the hammer power up is pretty much out of power. So yeah, that's a small nitpick thing, but for the most part, it's a pretty good thing. You do have the pie stage. This game is a little harder than the arcade, in my opinion. But overall, good showing, and I'm sure I didn't get past the first stage on this one, or the second stage, I should say. But I'm thinking that everything else, because usually when you have the pie stage in your game, it's a good indication that everything else is there. But overall, really good showing for the Amiga here. Next up, we got the Amstrad, and the Amstrad version is actually pretty clean. I mean, the only thing, if I had to complain about it, I just the way Mario's kind of running, he has to stick up his ass. But outside of that, I mean, the game's actually pretty fun. I mean, the collisions were the hitbox collisions were where they're supposed to be. It's easier to jump over the barrels in this one, and it actually has all 4 complete stages. It's very playable, for port. I mean, it's pretty good. Now, Jumpman, when he jumps, he kind of has that Atari 2600 looking Mario jump. He has that same kind of stiff animation when he does, but for the most part, I feel like this one looks actually pretty good. It plays well, responds well. The music's not bad in it. The music's where it's supposed to be. So overall, the Amstrad, pretty good representation here as far as Donkey Kong goes. Now, they do have, I know Amstrad can be hit or miss sometimes, but they nailed it, knocked out the park with this one. Overall, one of the better conversions of the game. And next up, we got the Atari 7800. And this version right here, normally I'm not hard on ports. I mean, I get it. Back in the day, we didn't have arcade quality at home. But I gotta talk about this one because I feel like Atari 7800 to me at the time was supposed to be the competitive part for the NES and the OG Sega Master System. And I feel like this was like the 3rd generation of gaming. So they, in my opinion, should have been more on par with the Nintendo version. You know, this one looks like, I mean, you can tell it's Donkey Kong, okay? But it's just like the noises they put in there and the sounds in this game. Normally that noise when Mario runs, the classic sound. This one sounds like it's like he's stepping on snakes, or it's just like a weird gaming sound. It makes sound when you climb the ladder, and when this dude picks up this hammer, it's like this dude's cracked out of his mind with this hammer. I mean, it's going way too fast, and it just seems like it's, I don't know. I feel like not the worst. Okay, it's not the worst version of this game, but I feel like for the 7800, we should have got a little bit more. Overall, I think it kind of follows the pattern of the NES. You do have the standard. You don't have the pie level in this one, but you do have the other stages. You have the girders and stuff like that. You have the elevator stage. So it does what it's supposed to, but I just feel like for the 7800, I'm just expecting a little bit more. Overall, decent game. It's just kind of it sounds like too much chaos on the screen at one time. You have this too many sound effects and just weird shit, like almost like they overdid it and tried to put like more in there than what should have been. But I'd say if you play this one, make sure you turn down the volume because it's way too busy on this screen as far as noise goes. But overall, 7800, I wanted more, but we'll take what we can get. Next up, we got Donkey Kong for the ColecoVision, and this was basically a system seller for the ColecoVision. This was one of the games that when Coleco came out, that was basically in my mind helped sell the system. Now, Coleco always delivered as far as that early generation of gaming during the Atari era. What was cool about it is the games were cartridge based. You could just plug and play. You didn't have to go through some of the harder setups if you had like the Commodore 64 or whatever like that. It was kind of on par with Atari, just the simplicity of it, but graphics being a whole lot better. And we'll see the Atari 2600 version later on. But this one right here, this was definitely a very, very strong showing for Donkey. Now, one thing you'll notice here with this version, though, Donkey Kong's on the opposite side of the screen. So you notice this right away. If you played Donkey Kong for a while, you'll notice right away that Donkey Kong is actually, the first stage is actually inverted and everything's on the opposite side. But we can get past that. Not to mention the barrels look like those old cookie ginger snaps. It looks like he's throwing like a bunch of ginger snaps down at you. They don't look like barrels in my opinion. But outside of that, that's me nitpicking. Overall, this is a pretty good showing. You don't have the pie stage for this one. Another thing you don't have with this version is once you complete the girder stage, it doesn't show the cutscene at the end where Donkey Kong falls at the end, hits his head. It just kind of goes right into the next stage. I mean, that's small things for a console. I mean, of back in the day, that era, that can be forgiven. Other than that, this is a pretty solid port. All the music's where it's supposed to be. The gameplay is choppy, but I mean, for ColecoVision game back in the day, this one's actually pretty cool. So yeah, this is probably one of the strong. One thing I'll say about Donkey Kong in this one though, the dude he doesn't look like the classic Donkey Kong we know. He looks like a mean old man that's just had life kick his ass, and he's just so disturbed and just kind of like no emotion, just an old man kind of like get off my lawn or get off my construction site, or however you want to put it. He looks like beat down, worn down, like he's just worried about the world with his wife and his kids probably, and just like, oh, this is my life. I mean, yeah, this is definitely, if we look at all the Donkey Kong characters, if we look at all the Donkey Kong incarnations of these sprites, this one looks absolutely depressed. So yeah, but other than that, strong showing as always for the ColecoVision. And next up, we got one of the most iconic things. If you were back in the 80s, God, what would you do to kill to get one of these? These were the tabletops. So if you remember the commercial back in the day, we bring that guy with the crazy 80s hair. He's like, so and so's at the arcade, and he's like shoots the game. Says, yeah, you want to take that game home with you? And he shoots the game, and it shrinks down, and then he's like, I'm playing at home, and you're playing the tabletops because the tabletops were cool. This was a thing that now they got handhelds, but back in the day, you actually had tabletop arcades where they had a small, and they got them now. New Wave sells them, and they're actually pretty freaking cool. If you ever can get the Space Ace or the Dragon's Lair one, they can retail anywhere from, they originally were like $160, but they could retail higher up to, $300 or $400 on eBay if you want one that bad. But anyway, going back to what I'm talking about, but they were cool because they were like little like miniature arcades. But as we're gonna see right now, this is not the arcade. It looks like the arcade physically, but when you play it, you get this. These games, they had a few. They had Pac-Man, I think they had Zaxxon, they had Donkey Kong, they had a couple of them. And this plays nothing. You know it's Mario only because, or not Mario, Donkey Kong only because of the box or the the machine you're playing it on. But other than that, this game plays totally different. It's not a lot of fun. I mean, it's just a classic of just back then. It didn't take much to make 80s kids happy. It didn't take us much to make us happy. We love the nostalgic and the feeling of I'm playing Donkey Kong. We can lie to ourselves. This is not Donkey Kong. This is a pretty bad version of the game. And for what it was, though, you were buying the nostalgia of the actual arcade machine and the whole selling of bring the arcade home. Kind of like those watches they had back in the day where they had little video games on your watches, but it was a crappy game like you shoot space monsters. Anyway, just know that this version of the game sucks. However, what makes it worthwhile is if you actually have the arcade machine. If you actually have one of these things, kudos to you because they are super cool and highly collectible. But if you're like me, having to emulate and play this version of it, just don't. I played it for you. You don't gotta play it again. This version sucks, but it does have a rich lore with how it came about and what it is. So yeah, if you can find one of these in the wild, definitely pick it up. Not for the game, just pick it up for the actual merchandise you're getting. With that said, let's move on. Next up, we're gonna take a look at one of the cooler versions of this game, Donkey Kong for the Game Boy. And this one, guys, this is definitely one of those hidden gems, okay? You look at it, and the game, I think this game, what made this one so cool, it kind of fooled everybody, okay? when you first played the, because Game Boy games, you weren't expecting much when you played a Game Boy game. It was portable, on the go fun. But this one made it cool because what it does, it starts off with the classic Donkey Kong, feel. You got the barrel stage, you got the girders, you got, basically what you'd have. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, they jazzed it up because this is Donkey Kong they got here. He's kind of the newer Donkey Kong, but not quite the one we got now. He's got the tie and everything, but he's kind of this weird in-between transition Donkey Kong. Anyway, it actually has voices in it where Pauline's at the top at the beginning of the stages, which is pretty cool. And you play traditional, first levels like you would in the arcade. But then once you get past that, the game opens up into a whole nother style of gameplay, and it adds elements of Mario giving them back classic powers, probably from Super Mario Bros. 2. You can grab stuff, pick it up, and throw it and stuff like that. And it turns the game upside down on its head, and it's a lot of fun. If you can find this one somewhere, definitely pick this one up and play it, because this is definitely one of those hidden gems and one of those times where the Game Boy just was clowning. It showed out on this one. It showed up big time. So this is actually a pretty cool, I won't even call it a port really. It's kind of its own thing, but it does pay homage with the first few levels playing like the old Donkey Kong. It even have a save feature and everything else like that. We can actually progress through the campaign and stuff like that. So yeah, this is actually a really cool one to pick up, and graphically, it is very good for the Game Boy. I mean, so yeah, if you ever find this one in the wild, go ahead and give it a shot. But yeah, they definitely, kudos to Nintendo on this one. They definitely knocked it out the park. Next up, we got the GBA, and I gotta say, after looking at the Game Boy version, this Game Boy Advance version, I don't know, it kind of sucks because it plays like the NES version, which is fine, but that's all it does. I mean, we just saw that one where they had Game Boy, you had the the earlier versions of Donkey Kong like themes, but then it went on to be its own adventure. And this one, it does everything the NES one does, and it didn't even put the Pi stage in. So I'm like, for Game Boy Advance, yeah, this is a huge letdown. If you stay away from this one on the Game Boy, I mean, honestly, if you ask me, I think the NES one actually plays better than this version. Now that's my opinion, but yeah, this was a huge letdown for the GBA because it's kind of like, yeah, it does what it's supposed to do. It checks the boxes, minus the Pi stage. I mean, if they would have had the Pi stage, maybe I'd still say it's still a disappointment for what the GBA is capable of. But I don't know. So this one's kind of like whatever. It's Donkey Kong. It checks the boxes. It's serviceable. But yeah, I just feel like GBA could have did it a lot bigger. But for what it is, if we're being honest, we're saying how close it is to the arcade. It's pretty close. Like I say, the Pi stage is missing, and but yeah, I think the NES version is superior to this. Definitely the arcade, but I even think the NES. So I think this is a lazy port, if you will, of the game. But yeah, here it is. It does what it's supposed to. It's Donkey Kong, I guess. And next up, we got the Intellivision, and this one's okay. I mean, it does what Intellivision does. It looks, you can tell it's Mario, just from the themes and the way it looks. But other than that, I mean, it doesn't really do anything special. It kind of looks like the graphics aren't that great on it. Donkey Kong is very minimalized here. He just looks like he's kind of iconic for having that sharp face, and he looks like he looks like a monster, so to speak. And when I say monster, I mean like a moss, like something you find, like a fossil you'd find. He has no graphic, he has really no design on him. I mean, the only version of him that probably looks worse is probably the Atari 2600 version, as we'll see in a minute. But overall, I mean, it's got the two stages. It's got the barrel stage, and then you got the rivet stage, and you got these they look like dragons kind of on the rivet stage. The fireballs, they kind of look like dragons or seahorses, if you will. Overall, for what it was okay. Not the worst, but it's all right. And next up, we got the NES version, and this is the version that most people will be familiar with. If you, especially back in the 80s, you got the arcade, and you got this version, and this is probably the most, in my mind, most accurate version of Donkey Kong as far as home consoles go. Obviously, it's a Nintendo product, and they were really good about making arcades. I mean, the arcade does look a little sharper, a little crisper, and the Pi stage is missing out of the NES version. But outside of that, I mean, and I still feel like this version does look better than the Game Boy Advance. Crazy as that sounds, but it is what it is. But this one plays well. The speed's good on it. The jump sounds aren't as good as the arcade. It's not as sharp, not as crisp, and when you run, doesn't sound as clean as the arcade does. But outside of that, I mean, there were hardware limitations with the NES. But overall, almost a perfect port of the game. And I will say this version is a lot easier than the arcade version. Arcade version does scale up and get pretty hard. But other than that, so if you play this one at home and then you go to arcade and play, you will definitely see a night and day difference of the skill factor. But outside of that, I mean, the game's pretty spot on with the arcade. Like I say, Saver minus the pie stage that's missing. But outside of that, overall strong showing for the NES. And I remember playing this one over and over back in the day at home because it was like, it was just cool the way they had it. But overall, strong showing for the NES here. And lastly, we got one of the most iconic versions of the game, one of the more popular, if you will, but not a great version of it. We have the Atari 2600. This one is probably, believe it or not, when I say this, I actually spent more time playing this version of the game than I would the NES. Because back in the day, that's what we had. An Atari, didn't have an NES yet, but Donkey Kong did come out for the Atari 2600 before the Nintendo Entertainment System came out. So this is where I spent most of my childhood playing this version of the game. Fun at the time, but looking back in retrospect, this game is not that great. Mario, this is the only version of Mario where he's wearing like a pajama suit. I mean, it looks like he has a red hoodie goodie. That's what my grandma used to call it back in the day, a hoodie goodie. It was basically that thing you put on where before you went to sleep and had those vinyl things on your feet and everything like that. Yeah, this is what this thing looks like. And then his hair. It looks like he has the worst comb over in history. And then his face is his hat's too small for his head, and the noise he makes, it's annoying as all get out. To top that off, the things he throws down. I remember if you're from back in the 80s, you remember that snack they had back in the snack cracker, Better Cheddars? Nobody seems to know what I'm talking about when I say that, but it looks like it's this yellow snack cracker. It was a circle and had dots in it. And that's exactly what these things look like. They don't look like barrels. They look like Better Cheddars he's throwing down the ramps at you and stuff like that. It does have the two stages. It only has two stages here. The springs, forget about, or the spring stage, forget about. The pie stage, only in your wildest dreams. This one only has two stages, the barrel stage and the girder stage. But you can tell it's Donkey Kong. You know it's Donkey Kong. And then you had the iconic noise that if you're old like me, you remember that noise when you clear a stage. Everybody remembers that. If you hear that sound anywhere else, you know that they're talking about the Atari. Now, one thing I will say about the Atari version that I believe, you ever played like if you ever seen movies like in the 80s where they had background noises of video games, this sound, the actual soundtrack, I won't say soundtrack, the actual sounds for the game are actually in a lot of 80s movies back in the day. You can actually hear the Atari noise, the Atari version of Donkey Kong being played. I don't know if the licensing is cheaper or whatever the case was. So, but this one is, bad as the game is, by today's standards, it is a very beloved version of the game because, like so many of us back in the day, if you were an Atari kid back in the day like me, then this one will be iconic to you, and you will have nostalgia and good, fond memories of playing this game. Because at the time, hey, it was Donkey Kong. I mean, and Atari games were what we expected. Some great, a lot of them terrible, and none of them arcade perfect. But at the same time, it's what we had and what we played. So it sounds like I'm dumping on this game, but I'm not. It's coming from a good place. I actually did enjoy and appreciate this at the time as a kid, but just growing up, me being so familiar with this version, that's why I noticed a lot of bad things about it. But overall, for the Atari 2600, mind you, this was actually a pretty good conversion of the game. I mean, I know I spent a lot of hours with it, so yeah. Overall, Atari, good job with what you had. I mean, you did what Atari you did what Atari games do back in the day. You gave us the best you could. And for that, we salute you. So let's finish up with the legacy, the lawsuits, and a small little documentary called The King of Kong. So, as far as gaming legacy goes, Donkey Kong helped create the platformer as we know it today. Now, before this, most arcade hits were shooters or maze games. So after Donkey Kong, you start seeing more climbing games and platforming style titles. And that path eventually led to Super Mario Bros. And the flood of platformers that followed. And it also gave the world Mario. In Donkey Kong, he's still called Jumpman, and he's a carpenter instead of a plumber. But the core design is there, the hat, the overalls, and the mustache. And those design choices came from hardware limitations, but they ended up creating one of the most recognizable characters on Earth. And what I love about Mario is he started off just like as just some random dude in the arcade. No Mushroom Kingdom, no lore. Princess Peach and all that stuff. Just, an arcade experiment and just evolved into something great. So Nintendo, always, nowadays Nintendo's kind of sue happy, but back in the day, Nintendo's ass was on the line. In 1982, Universal Studios noticed Donkey Kong's success and said, that looks a lot like King Kong. And we own King Kong, so we should get a piece of this money too. And they sued Nintendo in US federal court, claiming Donkey Kong infringed on their King Kong rights. But Nintendo fought back. Their lawyer at the time, John Kirby, argued three big points. One, Universal didn't actually own exclusive rights to King Kong the way they claimed. In a previous case, Universal had argued that King Kong's story and characters were basically in the public domain. Number two, even if Universal did have some rights, Donkey Kong was different enough. A comical cartoon-like ape in a video game, not a serious giant monster on a skyscraper. And number three, there wasn't real consumer confusion. I mean, people who played Donkey Kong didn't think it was an official King Kong product from Universal. Now, I will admit, as a kid, I did tie the two together. I mean, at the time, you're thinking Kong and Kong. I have to think they drew inspiration. Let's cut the crap. We know that they stole that from Universal. At least I believe they did. I think they got inspiration from that. Now, they did make their own thing, but big gorilla climbing on top of a skyscraper, climbing on top of a construction site. Yeah, they're kind of treading in, some dangerous waters there. That's just my opinion. Now, Judge Robert W. Sweet agreed with Nintendo here. In 1983, he ruled that Universal had no exclusive trademark on King Kong in the way they claimed, and any similarity between Donkey Kong and King Kong was kind of general and too vague. Gorilla, girl, guy, building, nothing that proved legal infringement, and at best, Donkey Kong was like a parody, not a copy. So Nintendo not only won the case, they later won an appeal too. Universal was even ordered to pay Nintendo damages and legal fees, including profits Universal made by licensing a competing King Kong video game from Tiger. And Nintendo thanked John Kirby in a very Nintendo-like way. They gave him a sailboat named the Donkey Kong, and later they honored him with the name of a new character, Kirby, and that's where the name comes from the Kirby series. Now, I'm just gonna weigh on this real quick. Nintendo. That's the thing. It's funny how things work, right? I think about this part right here, and like I say, this I just feel like Nintendo could sue Nintendo could make this game Donkey Kong, right? And I'm glad they did. But I still believe they were loosely basing this off King Kong. Call it a parody, call it what you want. And I think of modern Nintendo now with Pokemon and Power World. I mean, if you don't know that whole legacy, the whole debacle they're having here, trying to sue Power World for that Nintendo tries to have it to where, and I'm sorry, I'm off topic here, but I gotta say this. It's like how they want to say they want to have a patent on anything jumping out of a Pokeball like thing. So if you have a monster that comes out of an egg and it summons and it fights with you, Nintendo wants to patent that. As crazy as that sounds, now you can go from here. You can call it what you want. They got the idea of Donkey Kong. Some of that inspiration came from King Kong, no doubt in my mind. And now flip the script. 40 years later, you want to sit here and be petty and sue Power World or whatever. There's no right or wrong way to look at that. I'm just putting my opinion out in the world, but it's just funny how things go in circles. But anyway, let's continue and let's talk about a fun era of Donkey Kong for me, the King of Kong, Donkey Kong in the high score era. Now, decades after the arcade boom, long after, Donkey Kong found a second life and a new discoverance and resurgence through competitive high score play. In 2007, a documentary called The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, which is an excellent watch, by the way, it came out. And it follows a regular guy named Steve Wiebe as he tries to beat the long-standing Donkey Kong world record held by arcade legend and villain, it depends on who you ask, Billy Mitchell. And the film's iconic because it turns a simple high score chase into a real human story. I mean, you got the characters. You got Steve Wiebe is shown as the underdog, practicing in his garage, dealing with the stress of job, life, wife, kids, trying to prove himself. And you got this other guy, Billy Mitchell, and he's just smug and arrogant and selling like hot sauce. The guy sells hot sauce. Basically a veteran champion of Pac-Man and any kind of old school arcade games back in the day. And with a big personality and a reputation to protect. And then you got Twin Galaxies, scorekeeping system, and the referee. The arcade politics, they become part of the drama. And the movie was a hit with the critics and helped introduce a whole new audience to Donkey Kong, okay? It framed arcade gaming like a sports rivalry in some ways, with training heartbreak, and some drama and controversy. And years later, the story got even more intense. Modern times now, you got investigations into old Donkey Kong scores with the claim of some of Billy Mitchell's records, and they were done on emulation. And I'm not gonna go into that whole thing because I don't want to get sued because apparently people are sue happy. But I'm just recapping what the story said. And 2018, Twin Galaxies removed his scores and Billy Mitchell and banned him from the leaderboard. So I think it's a big legal thing going on there. But the main thing I want to talk about with the King of Kong is that was in the early days of YouTube's YouTube was still kind of getting its footing and stuff like that. When G4 was still on TV, G4 was still king and stuff like that. And these documentaries, arcade documentaries, not like today, but back in the day, they were a treat for you to watch. So yeah, I had a lot of fun watching that one. Definitely check it out. I mean, it's retro. I even think some of it. I always think some of it might have even been a little staged, but it was still fun, pure classic gold. As far as retro game entertainment. So definitely give that one, check that one out. And it's actually a storyline behind what's happened to the characters and the people on that show since. But yeah, definitely give that one a watch. I thought with Donkey Kong, remake of Donkey Kong, documentary here, I definitely got to include that as well. So when we talk about Donkey Kong's legacy, it's not just it inspired platformers or it created Mario. It's deeper than that. It's also Nintendo stood up in court and protected video games as real creative works, and how a simple arcade game became the center of a famous lawsuit, a hit documentary, and a never-ending high-score race. And over 40 years later, people are still lining up to play this game. They argue about it and tell their stories. So what do I think about Donkey Kong? Back in the day, I remember playing this one at my local mom and pop shop. I wouldn't see this one in the arcade. It was in the arcade, bigger arcades, but I remember seeing it first at the mom and pop shop. And for me, I was fascinated with just the sound of the machine. When you put your quarter in, that it's just so iconic and deep and earthy. And then just the storytelling, at the time, because it was like a cartoon video game. Because Nintendo always had like those cartoony sprites. If you look at games like Punch Out and arcade and stuff like that, Nintendo had their own certain signature hand-drawn style when they make these games, and it shined through with Donkey Kong. The fact that the levels were challenging enough to keep your interest, and you could actually flip the game probably one time, maybe two, but it was just a really cool game. And then the fact that at the time we knew King Kong was a big deal at the time, King Kong versus Godzilla, or whatever version of King Kong you watched. So to relate that with the game, Nintendo can say all day they want, oh, we were just a parrot. Yeah, okay, whatever. It was still, they played on the part that kids knew who King Kong was, and you'd even have the King Kong cartoon and everything. It was pretty cool how they did that. So yeah, you definitely want to play it. And then just the simplicity and the fun of the game. Then we had the ports at home and everything like that. And then the cabinet, the way the cabinet was designed, it was unique. It was the only cabinet that looked like that. And Nintendo cabinets are the only ones that had that look. Also, as far as pop culture went, you had the cereal. You had the Donkey Kong cereal, the bad commercial for it. You had the cartoon. It was just and then you had the spawn of Mario. But what a lot of people I think miss about Donkey Kong is you take these characters now, and yeah, you got Mario Kart, you got Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Pauline's even got a new look and everything like that. But which I definitely like her new look, how they gave her the mare in the modern Mario games. But I like how the segment right here, a small sliver in time where Donkey Kong can kind of stand on its own. It's almost like two different versions of the characters. You have the retro old school versions that we went over today, and they're kind of their own pioneers and separated, in my mind, from the new Donkey Kong we would get with Ty in the movie and all that. Yeah, it was cool if you were around back then. You could actually see the evolution and experience that older version that a lot of people probably missed and didn't grow up in the time. They know Mario from the modern day Mario, and even in 80s 90s Mario was a little different than what we got today, but that's going into a whole nother topic. But just know that this game was definitely a pioneer in my mind of platforming games. Introduced the Mario to the world, and Donkey Kong as well, and Pauline. She's often slept on in the series, but she would later come back and have a big part later. But at the time, it was a big deal. And in the cartoon, they gave her prominent roles. Pauline and Mario, they gave them adventures on the cartoons they had, and the Saturday Supercade, if you remember that from back in the day. So yeah, it was a big deal. So Donkey Kong was a classic. It will always be a classic. It's always fun to pick up and play. And if you're a gamer, or not, even if you're not a gamer and you just like the history of games, I'm sure you played Donkey Kong some form or fashion, from this point up to this point. If not, definitely give it a try. If you see it, if you'll find these lots of times. And Donkey Kong arcade machine, you can find, it's not super expensive. They're still pretty common. You can find those, especially remastered or remodeled ones they have, or refurbished ones. You can find those. Definitely give this one a try. If for some reason on God's green earth you haven't played this game before, give it a shot, because it's definitely a fun game. A game that one can say it definitely did a lot of firsts. So that's gonna do it with this version, guys. Today's Thanksgiving, so if you're out there, if you're traveling, have safe travels. If you're at home like me, just getting ready, our wife's gonna cook. I'm gonna watch the parade and then watch a ton of football. Tomorrow's the big Bears game. Go Bears. And with the Eagles, this is going to be their test of tests. I know that's totally off topic, but I have to give a shout out, because the Bears have been, on the rise, and we've had some pretty rough seasons up here in Chicago. So anyway, that's going to do it for that, guys. Enjoy today with your loved ones, your family. Happy Thanksgiving. Be safe. And that's going to do it for this one. As always, guys, take care of yourself. Protect you in peace. God bless you. And we'll catch you in the next episode.